So our next speaker will be Stewart Rhodes. I'm not going to say a whole lot about Stewart. I'm going to let him introduce himself. I will ask that after Stewart is finished, that he takes the opportunity to swear anybody in with the oath if they would like to be sworn in, if that's all right. So with that, I'll turn the podium over to you, Stewart, and it's all yours.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to see such a large group here. You guys have got a really awesome chapter developing, so it's always good to see that. Idaho has had some rocky times recently. I know there's been some leadership who left, and I'm just going to tell you that this is what's going to happen. As things get worse, people that you thought were staunch and stalwart are going to fade away, and the ones that are left over are the ones that you're really going to be able to depend upon. And so it's the wheat from the chaff. So we've got people who are opposed to what we just did in Ferguson. The decent and honorable defense of people who could not defend themselves, the strong defending the weak, is causing some people, and thankfully a few, to leave Oath Keepers because they claim that this is somehow outside of our mission. From the very beginning, our mission has been simply to do what? What is our oath? Defend the Constitution, right? Well, that's our mission. That's it. Defend the Constitution. If you go look at our bylaws, that's what it says. Our mission is to defend the Constitution. Now, how we defend it? Well, all of the ways we have to. That's how we defend it. We're not confined to any one particular strategy. Just as our oath is not quantified by any particular small list. You defend the Constitution all the time, every time, in every way you can. Now, we do have a broad strategy in Oath Keepers from the very beginning, and I know because I'm the guy that cooked it up, it came out of my head, and it's been a bizarre experience for me 5 years into this organization to have people try to tell me that I'm getting off track, that I'm no longer adhering to the original purpose of Oath Keepers. From the very beginning, you go look back at my Lexington Green address, and we went there for a purpose. That was our very first public coming out as Oath Keepers in a formal way. We went there for a purpose. And in that address, I talked about two men, two different men. One of them was Isaac Davis, a current militia captain who had had a premonition that he would not survive if it came to blows, if it came to combat. He had a premonition that he would die that day. And much like myself, he was a father of 5 children. I've got 6 now. But he still went out even though he had that premonition. He was a local gunsmith and also a leader of his militia company. And he showed up. He was the first man to fall at Concord Bridge. Even though he knew that he was going to die that day, he still did his duty because he understood that none of us gets out alive, and all that really matters is whether our children are free. And so he had his priorities straight. And he was what you could call a current servant. That was the military of their day. There was no standing army in America. It was the militia. The other one I talked about was an old veteran of the French and Indian War, Samuel Whitmore. I don't know if you know his story, but at the time Lexington conquered, I believe he was 80 years old, right? And he was a farmer. He was an ex-warrior, retired military. He's out tilling his field and saw the relief column coming up from Boston. And then his fellow citizens were ambushing the British on the way back on the retreat. And he decided it was time for him to step back into the ring. So he went into his farmhouse, left his field, went into his farmhouse, and grabbed a captured French sword that he still had from the war, and 2 dueling pistols that he had taken off of someone that he later remarked had suddenly was suddenly deceased, a Frenchman. He put on those 2 dueling pistols, put that French sword in his belt, and got his musket and his ball and powder, and went and ambushed the column at close range. He wasn't interested. He could not run and gun with the young guys, and so he made sure that he got close enough that he wasn't going to miss, and he wasn't worried about getting out of there. He ambushed them at close range, fired his musket, dropped 1 regular, pulled out his pistols, fired 2 more shots, dropped 2 more regulars. Then they charged him with bayonets. He drew his sword and fought sword against bayonet. He was bayoneted 19 times and left for dead. And the British went on. His mourning family, crying, believing he was dead, went and grabbed a door to come get his body. When they got there, they realized he was still alive. And not only was he still alive, he was trying to reload his musket for 1 more shot at the column. So that was the story I told on Lexington Green. Now, why did I pick that? I did it for a reason. It's not just about getting the current serving to do what their duty is. It's also about all of you veterans there. All of you. How many here has ever served in the military or police forces and swore that oath? When does your oath expire?
Never.
When you do. As long as you're on this side of the grass, you have a duty to defend the Constitution. And it's not just RTI to the current serving. It's not just urging them to do what's right at risk of their lives, where they could wind up in Leavenworth or in front of a firing squad for refusing orders. It's also your duty, if you have to be the modern Samuel Whitmore. I don't care how old you are. That's why I used him as an example. None of you are off the hook. Every last one of you has that duty and obligation. You do all you can, as the Founding Fathers did, to exhaust all of your remedies. You are honor-bound to do so. But in the end, when you've exhausted all those remedies, if you must be willing to do as Samuel Whitmore did. And asked many years later, he lived for another friggin' 9 years, I believe it was, and had more children. He was asked, why did he turn out and fight that day? Here's what he said. He said, I wanted my children and grandchildren to govern their own lives and not be subject to a distant king, is what he said. He also had his priorities straight. What was he concerned about? Was it his own skin? No, he was concerned about his children and his grandchildren, just like Isaac Davis. So a man who was a grandfather and a man who was a father of young children who were sick at the time in bed when he left his wife, they both understood their duty and their priorities. It's not about them. It's like it's not about you. It's about your children and your grandchildren. You have to let go of fear and let go of concern for your own skin. We are all going to die. What counts is whether or not our children and grandchildren are free. And that's all that matters. And as Thomas Paine said, he said, if there is to be trouble, let it come in my day, so that my children will have peace. That's the right mindset. Any other mindset will leave your children as slaves. Any other mindset will leave you as a slave. You'll die a slave, and you'll die leaving your children as slaves. And they will curse your name, and you will deserve it. So let go of your fear. And anybody who's in this organization who is not willing to walk their talk and believes that they fulfilled their oath simply by encouraging other men and women to do the right thing, but they're afraid to do so themselves, they need to hit the road. I don't want them in this organization. This is not an organization for hypocrites. It's not an organization for cowards. It's not an organization for people that say, go do as I say, but don't ask me to do the same. You must lead by example. You will have no credibility when talking to the current serving if you are not willing to risk yourself in something so small as starting a neighborhood watch. And we had people leave this organization simply because we were walking our talk and leading by example and doing nothing more extreme than encouraging our neighbors to get prepared and being willing to pass on our skills to our fellow Americans, and primarily by starting neighborhood watches. To them, that was too extreme, too risky, too dangerous. We had one so-called leader in this organization resign, and he said on the way out the door, "I can't do that, I have a family." And yet, he spent years parading around in an Oath Keeper t-shirt, telling current serving that they should refuse orders that they considered unlawful. And in the military, if you refuse orders during wartime, and later on it is ruled that was a lawful order, what can happen to you? What can happen to you, John? You can be executed. So here's a guy who wanted them to risk their lives and liberty in a very real way, and yet when it came right down to it, he was afraid to start a neighborhood watch. He's afraid to be on some list. So we have had, and I thank God for it, we have had what I call the exodus of the weenies out of this organization. Let them go. Let them go. Because as time goes forward and things get harder, you're going to see a divide among those who are serious and those who are not. And better to have it be done now so that you don't have to worry about being deserted when the time comes. You want to go look to the left and right of you and know that person's going to be there when you need them. So let them go. And we have had an influx of the stalwarts. Providence. I think it was an act of providence that we were given the opportunity we just had to do what we just did in Ferguson, Missouri. And the way it went like clockwork, because we had effective local leadership of people who were resolute and good, effective leaders. Sam Andrews down there, and also John Kerriman, who's a retired police officer and current academy instructor at the police academy there. Very strong local leadership, and that's what it takes. And then behind them came volunteers from across the country, just like at Bundy Ranch. And they did a bang-up job. And they did a good job of showing the country, leading by example, of the right path. The founding fathers expected you, the people, to stand up and preserve your lives, liberty, and property. They never intended for us to have a massive standing army and a massive standing army of police, which is what the police in this country are fast becoming. They are being transformed from officer safe, officer friendly, that we all were raised to respect and to trust. They're being transformed into an occupying army over us. Now I know there's a lot of good cops out there that don't believe that, and it's not their mindset. I know because they're in our organization, and some of them are here tonight. But that is the agenda. This is what you're going to see now, is a drive to nationalize the police, especially in the wake of Ferguson, in the wake of these other incidents across the country. There is an orchestrated attempt to divide and conquer the American people along racial lines, to pit the people against the police, and to nationalize the police and militarize them. So what you saw in Ferguson was a perfect example of this strategy. Back in August, it became very evident that they were presenting the American people with a false choice. And that false choice was either you're going to have unrestrained looting and arson and murder in the streets. If you don't want that, the only way you can stop it is militarized police and the violation of the rights of peaceable assembly and free speech, with curfews, with tear gas being sprayed at the whole crowd, with rubber bullets being sprayed indiscriminately, with rifles being pointed in on protesters. And we had our Missouri cops step up and say, this is the wrong way to do it. The smart way to do it, they said, was to put undercover officers in the crowd to identify the ones that are actually violating the law and throwing bricks or Molotov cocktails, identify them, and then have another snatch team, about 7 or 8 officers undercover, to go in and grab the guy, backed up by a quick reaction force, about 25 uniformed officers that were roaming around. Not big long lines of guys with shields, who are very exposed to fire, by the way, very exposed, but ineffective because the guys that are causing trouble are at the back of the crowd, throwing the bricks over the top of the crowd towards you. You cannot get to them if you're standing there in a shield line, except through the crowd. So if you use that kind of strategy, what do you wind up with? You wind up with abuse of people who were just there to protest. Whether you agree with their viewpoint or not, they have that right as Americans, right? So an ineffective strategy, it failed to stop the actual troublemakers, and there were some burning buildings back then too. It failed to arrest them, but it also failed to respect the rights of the people to peaceably assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances. We had Sam Andrews down there trains a lot of the SWAT snipers, and he saw guys that he had trained using their scopes on their rifles to look at the crowd. And he said, that's not how I train them. They're doing it wrong. And what happened is some of the brass at the top decided they wanted to show the people who was boss. That's the mindset in the police now. That's what's infiltrating their mindset, is we got to show them who's boss and assert our authority, when all they're doing is losing the hearts and minds of the people. And that's happening across the country. It's not just a black problem, it's an American problem. And I happen to think that, I haven't seen all the evidence, but I think it's probably very likely that Officer Wilson was justified in using force he did that day. But the problem is people don't trust the system anymore, because there's no accountability. They see egregious abuse happening with no repercussions, no accountability. They no longer trust the system. And when you react like that in a militarized way, all you're doing is confirming to them that yes, the police hate you, hate all of you, and don't respect your rights. So they're creating this tension. I believe they're trying to spark a race war in this country, try to pit Americans one against each other along racial lines. But there's also that divide and conquer between the people and the police. But as I said, the founders did not intend for you to be relying upon the military and the police to save you, either to provide you with security or to protect your rights. So that is why within the mission of this organization, it can never be enough for you to just say, I'm here to ask the military and the police to please respect our rights and to stand down. And aren't I such a wonderful patriot by going to them and asking them to do this? No. You are your own security. The founders intended that we the people are the militia, right? They even said in the Second Amendment that the militia, well-regulated militia, being necessary for the security of a free state. It's necessary. And you won't be free and you won't be secure without it. And the folks in Ferguson just got that lesson. A willful politician following orders from Washington, D.C. can withdraw, this is what Jefferson Nixon did, withdraw protection from the people of Ferguson, because that protection is not them. Who protects the town? Who protects the town?
Sheriff.
Who protects the town, Nick?
Elected sheriff.
No.
Well, the people themselves.
The people. The town protects the town. When you, the people, as the militia in the town, protect the town, can anyone withdraw your defense from you when you are the defense? Can't be done. Only when it's a select militia like the National Guard can they be ordered to stand down and not protect you. Only when it's the professional guardians, the so-called sheepdogs. I hate that term because you're not sheep. Only when there's a professional warrior class can your protection be withdrawn. If you are the protection for you as the militia, you can never be used against you to tyrannize you. Look at Switzerland, still have a militia there. Can the Swiss militia be used against the Swiss people to tyrannize them? No, because it is the people themselves. They can't do it. It can't be done. Oftentimes we'll tell the active duty, they can't do it without you. That's true. But when you are the security, they can't do it with or without you because you're it. You have got to be your own security. And until you are not safe. And until you are not free. I don't care how virtuous, how upstanding and honorable the active duty military and police are. They still are not you. They are part of us, they come from us, but they are not you. You are supposed to be your own security. And the folks in Ferguson just saw why. So we went there to lead by example, to show the right way. Instead of this false choice between chaos and insecurity and a hyper-militarized police state with no freedom, remember, necessary for the security of a free state. They want you to believe that the only way to be secure is give up your freedom. And if you don't give up your freedom, you won't be secure. We showed the third way, the founder's way. The people themselves could have secured every one of those buildings by simply putting a couple of guys on the rooftop with fire extinguishers and rifles, and a couple of guys inside the building with fire extinguishers and shotguns, which is exactly what we did. We showed the way. That is our responsibility as Oath Keepers. You have a duty and responsibility to take the founders' message, their timeless, hard-won lessons about human nature and what it takes to be free. You have an obligation and duty to take that and spread that message to your fellow man, not just by your words, but by your example, by your actions. You got to walk your talk. You know we're supposed to be the militia, well organized, well regulated, formed into units and training together. So how do you get from here to there? That's the goal, is a revitalized militia, right? We know we have to have it. Dr. Ibn Vieira is absolutely spot on about that. It is the core of the problem. A lack of sound money and a lack of the militia, the two greatest weaknesses in this country right now. Economic weakness and military weakness of you, the people. We got to get from here to there. But how do we get there? How do we get back to that revitalized militia? If you just wait and hope the state legislature will pass a militia statute and revitalize the militia through legislation, what's the likelihood of that happening before the economic collapse comes, Brandon? A snowball's chance in you know where? It's probably not going to happen. You get there not top down, not by begging the legislature to revitalize the militia and do with what's right. I mean, look at what you got in the legislature. Look what you got in Washington, D.C. A den of vipers, a den of oath breakers on both sides of the aisle, right? The odds of you cleaning out those oath breakers, putting in real constitutionalists who will then revitalize the militia in time to save you for what's coming, that ain't happening. So who is going to have to do this? Is it the politicians? Who is it going to have to be? It's going to be you. So that's why we started the CPT program. Not because we say that Oath Keepers is the answer. We are once again leading by example. We're going to say, within our ranks, within us as individual veterans, we are going to fulfill our duty as best we can to try to get the American people off their butts as fast as they can, as fast as we can, and get them prepared. And that's why I used, when I announced this program, I used the Special Forces team as an analogy. Not that we're all going to be SF. It's not like that. The point is what is the primary mission of a Special Forces A team? Is it to go blow stuff up and shoot things? No. What is it? It's to be trainers. That's right. To be training cadre. To go out into a village and give due respect for what's already there. The leadership that's already there, the people that already live there. They're not going there, they don't go into a Cambodian village or a village in Central America and try to get the villagers to go to Camp McCall and become SF and go through the Q course. They go there to say, okay, we're here to help you. We're here to strengthen what's already there, provide you with support and train you so that you can help yourselves and defend yourselves. That's the real mission. That's the real power of what SF does. Whether it's Afghanistan or Vietnam or anywhere else they've been. That's the real utility. That's what we are doing. We don't go into a community and say, we want you all to come join Oath Keepers. No, we go in and say, we're here to help you. It's a very agape, unconditional love, we're here to help kind of thing. And that has to be the spirit of it. I had an Oath Keeper that's a VFW commander one time on a conference call. He's like, yeah, I'm a VFW commander and I'm trying to get all my guys to go join Oath Keepers. I said, well, okay, but what are you doing as the VFW? He said, what do you mean? I said, what are you doing as the VFW commander in your own hall? Are you guys getting squared away and prepared? And he's like, well, yeah, but I'm trying to get them to come join Oath Keepers. I said, that's not the point. You already have a leadership position. You already have a unit of men. You already got a building. You already got money. But what are you doing with it? And then he says, oh, now I see what you're saying. So that's the point. I want him to get off his butt and organize his men in his own VFW hall. Imagine that every VFW hall across the country understood that they were a unit of civil defense for their community and got themselves squared away, got their communication squared away, got their emergency medicine squared away, all their medics, made sure their medics had all the things they need to patch holes when holes are made, got their securities squared away and their tactics. Imagine if all those old Army Rangers and Marine Corps infantry and old retired SF guys trained all the young men in their community, were a training cadre for their community. Imagine what that would look like across the country, how much stronger we would be. And we're talking about only the VFW, not talking about Oath Keepers. And then imagine every church in this country. In every church, you've got people with skills, whether they're military or not. You have a cross-section, you've got a community, you have a team already there. I have yet to be to a meeting where I haven't said, what's your skill set, what's your skill set, what's your skill set, that you haven't had an amazing cross-section of skills. That's a team right there. But most of them don't look at themselves as being a team because they see themselves as individuals only. And a lot of times they're afraid. They're afraid of being on some DHS list, afraid to step out and form a team. That's why I say you gotta let go of fear. So if you can get another thought experiment, imagine if every church in this country did simply the same thing that the Mormon church does. Where they set aside some portion of their tithing for preparedness and they encourage their members to prepare and store food and emergency supplies. Imagine what that'd be like. What would it be like, Pastor, if every church in America just did that? We'd be so much stronger, right? We would be. That's the point of our CPT program. This is our duty and obligation. If we know what's right, we have a duty and obligation to go and show by our example and lead the way. So that is what I need you to do as Oath Keepers. You have got to share your skills. Every one of you, how many guys are prior military? Raise your hand again. Every one of you learned skill sets in the military. Who paid for those skill sets?
Everyone.
The American people did, right? Who owns your skill sets then?
American people.
American people do. And what was your oath to? Constitution. You have a duty to pass those skills on to the next generation. That's why I say, no matter how busted up you might be, your duty is still there to pass on those skills. Each one teach one. You replicate yourself. Teach that young guy how to do the things you know how to do. Like back where we're at, we got this retired Ranger sniper we're going to have to just really tap into and make sure that we download into our heads everything he knows before he passes on. That's also our responsibility. When you've got some old veteran that you know has been through it, you have a duty and responsibility to slow down, sit down, talk to him, and learn what he has to teach you. So that his hard-learned lessons are not wasted. This is what we see in the military all the time. They wind up repeating the same mistakes over and over again. You can look at Vietnam or Afghanistan right now, and they're repeating a lot of the same mistakes as in Vietnam. The lessons learned are not being passed on. So we've got a duty and responsibility as Oath Keepers to go tap into that knowledge pool and bring it forward, and pay it forward to the next generation. So that means your personal skills, but also means the skills of that old veteran down the street. Go get him and have him teach you what he knows, and then pass it on to the other guys. That's another reason why we use the SF team analogy. They all got their specialties. What do? They cross-train. They train each other to the combat medic. The 18 Delta, right? That's the name of it. He will train all the rest of the guys at least to combat lifesaver level, and you keep training up as you go. The weapons expert, everyone learns how to shoot, move, and communicate, like we're going to do tomorrow. Got to have it. How many infantry vets in the room right here? Infantry veterans. You guys have a special duty to pass on those skills. That's a critical skill set. Most people have no idea how to move as a buddy team. No idea how to move as a fire team or a squad. Absolutely no idea. And without that, how effective are they going to be in a firefight? Up against MS-13, guys like that who have gone and done that, and they go train, they're going to be in a world of hurt. And this goes back to the box of political correctness the American people have allowed themselves, even the patriots, have allowed themselves to be confined to. It's okay in the gun culture to go to Front Sight, Thunder Ranch, what's the other one out there? Gun Sight, I've been to all those. But all of them teach only individual shooting, right? At the very most, they'll talk about husband and wife working together against a mugger. But they won't teach you infantry skills of actual move, shoot, and communicate, how to win a firefight. Oh no, we can't teach you that. That's too extreme. And Americans, for the most part, won't go train those skills, will they? How many times have you heard someone talk about that? Oh, I can't do that. That's too out there. So that the bad guys, Southern Poverty Law Center, the DHS, the Obama administration, whoever they are, have gotten the American patriots in the gun culture to confine their skill set to only their own individual ability to shoot as an individual, not work as a team. They've constrained you. So what they're doing is limiting your military power as a people. If you let them do that, what would you call yourself then? What do you call someone that lets somebody else?
Coward.
Well, yeah, coward,
Victim.
dupe, victim, right. If they want you to be afraid to come together and train so that you're weaker, so that you're isolated. So like when Alexander Solzhenitsyn in the Gulag Archipelago lamented, he talked about this. He said, look, when we were in the camps, he said, how we burned in the camps, wondering, what if things had been different? What if we had realized we had nothing left to lose, and instead of hiding in their homes and paling in terror, hoping that the knock on the door would not come to them but go to their neighbor instead, that instead they had realized they had nothing left to lose, come together and ambush the secret police down in the hallway with whatever was at hand, pokers, axes, hammers, and knives. He said if they'd have realized they had nothing left to lose and fought together, then Stalin, despite all his thirst, the machine would have ground to a halt because he'd run out of security officers. If you are isolated and alone when they come for you, who will win?
They will.
Right? But if you are united together as the founders intended you to be, as the militia, who will win?
We will.
You will. That's a fact. If you don't do it, you will lose as individuals when they come for you. If you do it, you will win. You might die like Isaac Davis, but did he lose? No. Was his cause a lost cause? Did he give his life for a defeat? No. We won. You have got to unite. You've got to set aside your fear and be willing to train. Full spectrum. It's not just about shooting, of course. It's also about everything else that goes along with it. That's why an SFA team has medics on it, and engineers, and commo experts. You've got to have all those things. Like Alan said, you got to have comms. If you ain't got comms, you ain't got, you know what? Got to have all those things. But you can't be afraid to come together. And this is a timeless lesson that applies all over the world. We just saw it in Ferguson. If the people of Ferguson had united themselves and formed neighborhood watches, as we urged them to do, but they did not do, they could have secured their own buildings. And look what happens whenever there's duress. What happened to the Rodney King riots? What did the Korean shop owners wind up doing? They took to their roofs, they got shotguns and rifles out, and they came together and protected their shops. Those shops did not burn. In Ferguson, we weren't the only ones doing this either. There were some young black men who went and guarded the Conoco station owned by a white man who they respected. And out of their friendship for him, they went and guarded his door, his shop, with AR-15s and handguns. His store went untouched. Not one broken window, not one crack in his windows. Why? Because the cops saved him? No. Because the National Guard saved him? No. Because his neighbors got together and saved him. If only the rest of Ferguson had done the exact same thing. This lesson was also recently demonstrated in Mexico, in Michoacan. The people of Michoacan were being tyrannized and terrorized by the cartels. The cartels had bought the politicians, had bought all the cops. They were in the back pocket of the cartels. And they were telling the people, you got to pay us a tax. You got to pay us protection money. And then when the people, they kept ringing them more and more and making it higher and higher. And then when the people finally couldn't pay the money, guess what they took instead? Their daughters. They took their daughters and forced them into prostitution. It was only when that happened, when they began to lose their children to the cartels, that they finally stood up and united and kicked the cartels' butts. It started with 300 men who ambushed the cartels. It was at a cattlemen's association meeting where all the cattle ranchers had self-governed for generations. And the cartel was going to go in there and tell them what's what and take over that operation too. But it was that's where it started. But the real drive was them taking their daughters. That is how far it had to go. That is how far down the road of a long train of abuses they had to go before they realized their own strength. Every single one of them, by themselves, a man and a woman and their family, were weak and vulnerable to the cartel, right? 100 cartel operatives tyrannized a town of 17,000 people. Because when they were isolated and not organized, when the cartel came to your house to get you, they had an artificial superiority of force. But when the people united, it only took 300 average Joes, not special forces veterans, not retired cops, just 300 average Joes that grabbed rifles, took it to the cartel, and kicked their butts. And then it grew from there. Then it became 3,000. Then the cartels were running and hiding because they were hunting them down. The first group of cartel guys they grabbed, they turned them over to the cops. Here's what the cops did. A few hours later, let them go. So after that, no more turning them over to the cops. They found someone with a cartel tattoo, they killed him. Cartel tattoo equaled death. And they took it to him and won. Because they understood that if they're united, there are more good guys than bad guys. That's what they finally realized. But the good guys have got to be organized. If the good guys are not organized, the bad guys will rule. Whether it's MS-13, whether it's the cartels, whether it's the New Black Panthers, whether it's the KKK, whether it's some prepper pirate wannabe warlord in your community who thinks he's gonna rule over you and rape and pillage, they will rule over you if you're not organized. Secret police, same thing there. Solzhenitsyn understood it. Whether it's the cartel or the secret police, it turns out that Hillary was right. It does take a community. It takes a community to kick the crap out of the cartel. It takes a community to whip the snot out of the secret police too. I don't mean to cuss, Pastor, but it takes a community. If you are not united, you are always going to be prey to the predators who do unite and work together, whether it's private criminals or public criminals, whether it's oath breakers in Washington, D.C., or predatory evil bastards, I'm keep cussing, sorry, like ISIS. What is the answer to ISIS from those who only want us to RTI? How is a sit-in or civil disobedience going to stop people who want to cut off your heads and your children's heads, whether they're the cartels or whether they're ISIS? They got no answer for it. Cold steel and hot lead is all that you're ever going to be able to use to stop things like that. The founders understood it. That's why you are the militia. You got to get organized. My preferred way to do that is neighborhood watches first. Because even when you get a sheriff, a good constitutional sheriff with a posse behind him, even when you get your town council or your county commissioners to enact a militia statute that brings all the able-bodied people together as the militia, that's a real militia. Bubba and his 6 pals is not a militia. The real militia is when you are all united, all of you, the whole town. But even when you have that, no one's going to go out and deploy and project force to go guard the community if their home's not safe. Just like right now, no police officer, no EMT, no paramedic, no search and rescue, no firefighter is going to leave home and go out to safeguard the community if his wife and kids are not safe. Will they? They won't. They'll stay home and guard them. So you have to provide local security right down to neighborhood level. That's why neighborhood watch has got to come first. And another great example of these timeless truths comes out of Vietnam is the Marine Corps CAP program, Combined Action Platoons. So they took a squad of a dozen Marines, all of them NCOs or corporals, put them in a village, paired them up with 3 squads of Vietnamese villagers. That's a platoon, Combined Action Platoon. They lived in the village, lived with the villagers. But by being there, they occupied the ground. Instead of sleeping through and at night leaving the village to be taken back over by the Viet Cong, they stayed there. So they occupied the ground. So the Viet Cong could not come in and terrorize the villagers. That's an important lesson. You have to have local security. You can't say, me and my dozen militia pals are the militia for the state of Idaho, and we're going to go save the world. Or, hey, me and my Oakland pals are going to go run to Bundy Ranch and go run to Ferguson and do all these things. The most important thing is that local security. If the people are not secure in their homes from the predations of either evil government or evil criminals, I repeat myself, if they're not secure in their homes and with local security, they will be subject to the pressures, whether it's from bad government or bad private actors. Like, look at Afghanistan right now. How many folks have watched that one documentary with Stropo about that outpost in Afghanistan? They go into the village, they sweep through, make a few arrests of guys they suspect are Taliban, they leave the village. But then they meet with the elders of the village, and they try to convince them to side with the Americans instead of being under the rule of Taliban. But they don't guard the village. If you don't provide them security in the village, what's going to happen when you leave at night? The Taliban's going to come in, cut off a couple of heads, for examples. Pressure everybody else to bend the knee to them, right? You have to provide local security. Same goes for the American people. And that goes right back to the founders. They understood that. That's why they had, this is the problem I have with so many patriots out there. They want to be secret squirrel, secret cell guys that are going to be the secret cell that no one knows about. How is a secret cell going to save you or help you in the middle of the night when MS-13 comes rolling through your neighborhood? Or the cartels? Or when ISIS decides to target you because you're a veteran and come to your house? How's a secret cell going to help you? How would you even know how to call them? How's the secret cell going to help you when DHS comes to get you in the middle of the night? DHS, with your local SWAT team, can come and get any one of you probably in the middle of the night, right? Unless you really prepare your ground. But if you were united with your neighbors and all the veterans in your community, imagine if your VFW alone was united and equipped and trained and ready to respond as a QRF to your call for help, along with your neighbors, the other veterans in your community. Could they do it? What happened to Bundy Ranch? I saw Las Vegas Metro SWAT out there. They were like fish out of water. They were dealing with something totally different animal. They weren't dealing with inner city thugs and private individuals in their homes. They were dealing with well-trained veterans and dedicated American citizens standing together. Different dynamic. The secret police in any society can only tyrannize you if you're not united. That was what Solzhenitsyn realized, right? This is what the Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto finally realized. They can't do it if you're united. The founders understood that a long time ago. That's why they had the Sons of Liberty, the secret organization. But they also had a very public, all-encompassing militia of all the people. Could General Gage send only a handful of officers to go and arrest Hancock and Adams on April 19, 1775? No, he couldn't do it. He had to send a battalion, right? It was 2 battalions? He had to send an entire battalion of Marines, Royal Marines, to go do this, and Grenadiers. And that's how it kicked off. The modern context is, if you are united as a public body of Americans, whether they're neighborhood watches or a full militia or a posse or whatever, if the people of Boundary County, Idaho, for example, were all united and trained and formed into units together for mutual defense, could any SWAT team, could any FBI HRT team, could even Special Forces Delta or any of those other high-speed low-drag teams, could they come and take you away in the middle of the night if your neighbors were united behind you? It'd be another April 19th, wouldn't it? They couldn't do it. They would have to call on the U.S. Marine Corps or the Standing Army to come do it. That's what I want them to have to do. I want you to be so strong and united that they can't use secret police against you in the middle of the night. That they'll be forced, if they want to try to tyrannize you, they'll be forced to ask or try to order the U.S. Marine Corps or the U.S. Army to come do it to you. They can always find guys like Dan Love, that contractor down there at Bundy Ranch who desecrated the SF tab by being there and doing what he did, violating their motto, "De oppresso liber." He was the oppressor. They can always find guys like that. But there are not enough of them to tyrannize you if you are united. If you're not united, there are. But if you're united together in mutual self-defense and aid, they can't do it with a handful of mercenaries. Force them to try to order the Marine Corps. Throw me in that briar patch. What do you think would be the response of the U.S. Marine Corps if ordered to come to Idaho and come try to get you, the American patriots, and round you up? What do you think would happen? Do you think they'd do that? Do you know how many Marines showed up at Bundy Ranch? How many Marines were there? A whole bunch of Marines were there. Some of them current serving, some of them had just gotten out. Some of them still had Afghanistan dust on their boots. Like that one Marsoc Marine Jr., scary dude. They were there. And if you think they're any different than the guys they just served with who are still in, you got something else coming to you. It's the same mindset. The communists have done what they call the long march through our institutions. They have taken over academia, they have taken over media, politics, law, but they have not captured the hearts and minds of our warrior class. The guys who serve in the Marine Corps, they do that because Dad was a Marine and Grandpa was a Marine, and they want to have that same esprit de corps. Guys who served in the Army Infantry, same way. John, did you go serve infantry because you wanted a college education or a good job?
No.
Why'd you do it?
Serve the country.
Right. Do you think a guy like this is going to go pull trigger on his fellow Montanans or his fellow Idahoans, his fellow Rocky Mountain Redoubt residents? It's not happening. Make them try to use the Army and Marine Corps against you. But the only way you can do that is be so strong they can't do it any other way. They know that they've got a problem. They know that there'd be a division in the ranks. I hope that if you become strong enough, they can't do it without the Army and Marine Corps, that they will blink and not try it. But I don't think that's how it's going to go down. I think you're going to see an attempt. They're going to be forced into a corner, and all they got is a hammer. You know, when all you got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. They're going to want to try to use force at some point. So my point is that, I'll close with this. I have to be honest with you and tell you that I see this as simply what we're doing now is preparing the future battle space. To whatever degree we can do with as much wisdom as possible. And I screw up all the time. I make all kinds of mistakes. And you will too. The only guy that doesn't make mistakes is the guy's not doing anything. You're going to make mistakes. But you have a duty and responsibility to get back up, dust yourself off, and get back at it. Try to learn from your mistakes, but get back to work. You have this duty and obligation. We are preparing the future battle space. How difficult the battle will be is yet to be determined, and will be determined by your actions, what each one of you does or fails to do. You are running out of time. You guys just went through a whole summer, which is prime training time, and quite a few of the folks here in Idaho did not train like they should have been training. Now, John, Brandon, John, by the way, John Roloff right here he serves several different tours in Iraq and has quite a bit of infantry combat experience. He helps me train people in Montana. Did we slack off in the summertime? We trained every weekend, right?
Yep.
Every weekend we were out training. Brandon was helping us too. Every weekend. So now you've gone through the summer, quite a few of you have not been training every weekend. And so you're going to wind up training tomorrow when it's cold and snowy and drizzly and rainy and wet. So this is the way it goes.
There's no such thing as inclement weather.
If it ain't raining, you ain't training.
That's right.
So, point being is you're running out of time. So I urge you to work as hard and as fast as you can to get as ready as you can. And you need to think in terms of the most fundamental, essential, necessary things. And those are, number 1, security. Number 2, communications. Number 3, logistics and support. You got to be able to eat. Can't fight if you're starved to death. Number 4, medical. Got to have that too. These are critical skill sets you must have. Got to have them. If you don't have them squared away now, get them squared away. And you need to think in terms of brass tacks. Who's on my buddy team? Who can you rely on to back you up in a firefight? Who you've actually trained with? Who's on my buddy team? Who's on my fire team? Who's on my squad? Those are the questions you need to ask yourself every day when you wake up. And you need to answer those questions and fill those slots. All the politics in the world, all the petitions, all the education is not going to save you when it comes to brass tacks. It's not going to win the fight for liberty when it comes to brass tacks. Who's on your fire team? Who's on your squad? Who's in your platoon? Who's on your team? Find out. Find a team. Build a team. Lead a team. And then go out there and train others. And build those teams. I don't want them all under the banner of Oath Keepers. That'd be stupid. You want to have 1,000 points of light, 1,000 points of organization and teamwork out there from the bottom up, grassroots, to restore the Republic. And it starts with you, in your own family. In your own family, do you have security? Do you know how to move, shoot, communicate together? In your own family, do you have emergency medicine? We realized the deficiency in my family. It's my son Dakota right here. I sent him to EMT school because I realized we had a deficiency in our own family, not enough medical training. So he went to EMT school. It's part of his homeschooling, right? So, do you have emergency communications in your family? Someone in your family's got to be the person you tap to be the commo expert. I'm probably not going to be the guy in my family. I'll pick somebody else in my family to go do that. Might want to be in Dakota too. So who has those critical skills in your own family? That's your first team. And then go out from there. Family, extended family, friends, neighbors, town, county. Start with you. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, folks. Now let's say a quick word about tomorrow's training. So tomorrow we're going to do, and like Mike, you said we're going to go to the Super One?
Super One parking lot.
Super One parking lot at 9:30. Sharp. Be here, be there. Dress warm. Prepare for the worst weather. We have the ability to go inside, warm up, or is that not? We do, okay. So, and like I said in the email, if y'all saw or not, but even if you've got physical limitations, I want you to come out, you can observe. I just want you to be exposed to, some basic infantry skill sets. And I don't know everything, I'm not some kind of expert. I'll just teach you what I know. And John's here to help me, and you other infantry veterans, you're more than, give me your infantry veterans again. Guys, I want you to show up tomorrow and help me teach this class, okay? Come out and help. Because when I'm gone, it's going to be on you to help train this community, right? You guys just pick up the ball and keep running with it. Train them, teach them everything you know. Cross-train with each other, share knowledge. Go out and learn new stuff. John Mosby, I believe, is running classes in this area. I recommend him highly. We just did a TC3 class with him, Combat Casualty Care. Really good instructor. Got some guys here who've been to his class. So you got, I encourage you to go train with anybody you can, but I also encourage you infantry veterans to be volunteer instructors here in your local community. You're the local training cadre. So tomorrow, I always try to lead by example. I'm coming here to train. I have a rule, it's a hard rule from now on. I go nowhere, I don't give any speeches unless we also have a training day. I just won't do it anymore. I'm done just flapping my gums. I want to train, I want to do something real along with it. So tomorrow we'll lead a class. It's going to be basic fire maneuver, basic patrolling. I was in a reconnaissance unit when I was as a paratrooper. So that's what I know best is moving through the woods quietly. Pass on as much skills as we can. John has different background. He's had a lot of direct combat experience in Iraq. Very good synergy. He helps me, he fills the holes that I have. So tomorrow we're going to work on just basic movement. It'll be bolts out, bolts and bolt carriers out of the rifles, because we don't have to worry about safety. You can just focus on learning these concepts. You might be good at shooting as an individual, but you need to learn how to move as a team. So that's what we're going to do tomorrow, and we'll teach you as much as we possibly can from about 10 a.m. all the way until about 4 o'clock, okay? If you can't stay the whole time, don't worry about it, you can take off. I don't care if you have no background. In fact, that's kind of the point. So whatever your background is, come out and watch and learn. If you have experience and want to chime in and help, by all means, okay? Okay, that's it for that. We good?
Okay.
All right. Any questions now about anything? Yeah.
I would like to add to the training exercise tomorrow that a hot lunch will be provided by the Boundary County Oath Keeper chapter.
Awesome, a hot lunch. That's great. Thanks a lot, guys. Good to go. Okay, any other questions about anything I covered tonight? I know I bounced all over the place, but any questions about anything? Yes, sir.
I just got one thing to say. I brought my thumb drive, terabyte. I teach around American Readout. I got 20 years of everything I teach. So I don't do buttons. So if you guys bring a computer, it takes an hour to download all my material. It's everything you can possibly think of. That was about 2 years ago.
Okay.
So if you guys want data, I think Mike's got it. But
On you mean bring a little
You can bring your
zip drive?
if it's in there, they said it was. I don't do buttons. I just load stuff up and share that information with the local people.
What do you mean don't do buttons? I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Yeah, it's logged at a terabyte thumb drive, and they plug this out of the computer. Somebody does magic with the buttons, and it transfers the information.
Oh, I got you. Okay, I got you. Okay, you'll help them do that, Mike?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, awesome.
An hour per unit.
Good to go. And you teach preparedness classes too in the community, right?
Right.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a statement before everybody leaves. I brought cake tonight. There's dishes and silverware out there.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. This is your 1-year anniversary as a chapter, right?
Right.
That's pretty awesome. Yes, ma'am.
More of a statement. I'm from a Mormon church. We come to the Oath Keepers. I brought a list of emergency preparedness. Our church is kind of doing a push right now, and we're to get oils and fats this month. So I brought lists. I'll put them back by the foods. You can take a list. It's 25 pounds per person, so take that into consideration.
You have it back there?
I will put them back there. I haven't put them yet, so.
Thank you. Hey, one question for you then. Are the canneries still open to non-church members?
The government has caused some issues with our canneries, and our canneries are open to the fact that you can purchase stuff there. They are not allowing us to harvest food anymore and can. So we are under the thumb of the FDA, just like everyone else.
Right.
But we've been counseled by our leaders to get our acts together. And like I said, so this is last month's, the fat oils. December's is fuels, like wood, propane, that kind of thing. And I can put a list. I can give a list to Mike, and people can go on the Oath Keepers and to get it.
Okay.
Just so people are aware. We're just trying to help where we can in our community.
And they have a lot of, decades of experience in food storage, so why reinvent the wheel? I recommend you go and learn from them. I mean, just real quick, Basic recommendation of the Mormon Church is 6 months of the stuff you're going to use anyway. Canned goods, boxed goods, just build up your own, basically your own store that you just rotate. And then bulk foods that last a long time. Yes, ma'am?
They've been pushing for a year.
A year of
Food storage, fuel storage. Well, let me put it this way, if you were to hunker down for a year and you had to survive, anything that it would take for you to survive for that year.
Right. Yeah.
Is it still on Provident Living website?
Yes.
Yes, there you go, right, good point. Yeah, go to providentliving.com and they have those recommendations, good, yeah. Any other questions about anything I covered tonight? Anything at all? I can't believe you guys have questions about all the stuff I said. That's amazing. Did I burn you out? Yeah, go ahead.
Have we replaced state leadership yet?
What's that?
Has state leadership been replaced yet?
State leadership. What was the whole point of my talk? You are your leader, okay? In your town, or actually in your neighborhood first. That's more important. It really is. It's the most important thing you can do right now is that every single one of you is a leader. Every single one of you has a duty and responsibility as a leader to organize a neighborhood watch in your neighborhood. That is your first team. And unless you're doing that, then you're messing up. You have got to, I'm trying not to cuss, you have got to have a neighborhood watch. That's more important than some guy with the title state chapter president. I mean, I know it's nice to have that for organizations. But really, guys, neighborhood watch, neighborhood watch, neighborhood watch. It's like in real estate, it's location, location, location. For you, it's your own neighborhood. Right now, we just had a conference call with the guys in New York, our leadership there, great leadership team. One of them lives in Buffalo. Guess where he's going? Nowhere. You know why? Because he's buried in snow. He couldn't get to his neighbor's yard to go trim a tree back or knock some snow off a tree that was going to collapse a tree. He tried to get to his neighbor's tree. He couldn't do it. It's just too thick of snow. He didn't have snowshoes. So he's stuck. So there could be a situation where it can be happen for man-made or natural reasons where you just simply can't go out of your own neighborhood. So if that's not squared away, it won't matter what kind of comms you have. So I get people all the time, can you talk to your leadership across the country? I'm like, I don't have much hair left to pull out. I don't need to talk to them. When the crap hits the fan, they don't need orders from Stewart Rhodes about what to do. What they really need is a neighborhood watch that can communicate in the neighborhood. And with the next neighborhood watch, and with the VFW down the road, and with the sheriff's posses and everything else. That's the most important thing. Would it be wonderful to have general class, extra class hams who could talk to the world and exchange information across state lines? Of course. But the most important thing is your own neighborhood. So we're going to, just like we want you to build your community from the bottom up, we'll do the same in Oath Keepers. I'm kind of done with trying to look for some guy to have the title of chapter president who I then trust with the whole state. I instead want to see town chapters and county chapters like this one. This is awesome. Mike has done a great job. And the rest of you guys that are helping him. This is what it's about. Because this is the community. Right now, if something happened in this community and you folks needed to get together and do something about it, could you do it? Yep. Yes, you could. Because you're right here. Do you need somebody else to tell you what to do? No, you don't. Okay? This is where it's at. All right, any other questions? We done? Yes, sir.
You brought up a point about people going off to Ferguson and stuff like this doing it, and you talked about people being prepared with the local.
Right.
You can't go to Ferguson unless your own home is in order.
That's right.
In my opinion, that's just what I was thinking. I was talking to some other people, and I said, well, I wouldn't go risk my life for them, leaving my own family and my own house exposed. Right? So
well, I mean,
where are these people coming from? Are they in chapters that are organized and they feel safe enough they can leave their own Oath Keeper meeting, their own area of operation in a sense and go work for them and put their life at risk for something else?
Well,
or somebody else that hasn't done it or aren't doing it?
Well, we're leading by example. That's the point. It's trying to show them the right way. And by going there, we were an example to the whole nation, right? That lesson.
I love reading about it and seeing about Bundy Ranch too.
Right.
But I'm just wondering, we're not at that point that I know of. I mean, here, because I don't feel like I can leave my house in a sense with,
We have guys sitting right here who went to Bundy Ranch. He went, right? I'm never going to tell you that you have to go do something like that. Your duty, you do have a duty to prepare this area. That's absolute. Whether or not you're going to go and go project out, I'm not going to try to demand that or insist that. I think we have a duty as Americans to stand up against injustice wherever we can. But the big point picture is, the big point is that it really shouldn't have taken guys from all over the country to go to Bundy Ranch. It was a demonstration of the resolve of the American people. It was a wonderful example, just like Ferguson just was with our guys there. It shouldn't take that though. The people of Clark County should have handled this. There's enough veterans right there to do it. I grew up there, I know. There's enough veterans there. Where were they at? Nevada should have had it handled. So this goes to show you our weakness, our lack of organization, our lack of standing up in our own communities. So it's good and bad. Ferguson the same way. We had a guy from Vermont come down, Army Airborne veteran. We had a Marine from Nebraska. That's awesome. But it should have been handled by the people of Ferguson. It should have been handled by the people of Missouri. So the big point is that's why you've got to get your community strong. And when it comes to leadership, it's critical that you get organized now so you can sort out who is a competent leader in your community or a competent leadership team right here. And you do that through training together, just like in the Founders Day. The men trained together, and only after they trained together did they elect a leader to lead their unit. When they knew the man's character through hard training and through deployment, natural disasters. You folks need to exercise those muscles. You don't just wait for the future Bundy Ranch in Idaho. Whether it's an ice storm, whether it's a mudslide they had in Washington State, whether it's floods that they had down in Colorado, natural disasters like that, you guys need to get out there and deploy together and work on those things. That's how you sort out all the bugs. That's how you figure out how to work together right. And that's how you find out who's a weirdo and a flake and an egomaniac and who's competent and who's not. Sort it out now for things like that before it gets to Lexington and Concord time, okay? That comes from training together now, though. Any other questions?
I have a question. What's your perspective on foreign provocateurs with the borders being open? Do you see that being an issue in America right now? I mean, you talk about strengthening communities. Are these illegals coming in? Are there foreign elements coming in?
Yes. We have been, it's been frustrating for us, quite frankly. We've been working for months now on a security operation in Texas to go and guard Texas ranches against the cartels. We're just trying to do it in as effective a way as possible. So we haven't pulled the trigger on it yet, but that's coming. Because the cartels are taking over Texas towns and ranches. They've taken over the towns and ranches along the Mexican border on the Mexican side, and now they're taking over the towns and ranches on the American side too. It's happening. And it's because of the absolute willful collusion of our government this is happening. It's not by accident. So much like in Ferguson where they left people unprotected intentionally for their own political purposes, the same thing's going on along the border. That border's being left unguarded and wide open for political purposes. And as far as I'm concerned, we need to stop the cartels. And just like the people of Michoacan were obligated to take it to the cartels themselves, we are going to have to do the exact same thing along the border. It's going to be up to us. Our government's not going to do it. Our government is in the back pocket of the cartels too. Sometimes directly in some of these towns along the border in Texas, the cartels own the politicians. They own those towns. And in fact, I think in McAllen, Texas, for example, half the population are illegal aliens. Half of the people that live there. They're taking over those towns. You know? And for me, it's not about race. I'm a quarter Mexican. My great-grandfather rode a Pancho Villa. And then he decided to have a better life and came to the United States legally. And my family grew up picking grapes on my mom's side of the family. But I don't want to live in Mexico. My family came from Mexico to come to the United States for a reason. I don't want to see this country turn into what they have down there, a third world corrupt dictatorship. But that's what's coming north. We have to stop it. So we are going to be going down there and guarding Texas ranches. We're just trying to do it as effectively as we can. We don't want another cluster like we saw Bundy Ranch turn into at the end. We want to make sure it's done right as best we can. And knowing that our own government is going to stack against us, just like in Ferguson, they tried to shut us down. Not only did they fail to protect the people, they tried to stop us from protecting them. Just one measly little block of buildings they thought they saw as a threat to their agenda, and they tried to shut us down. And it's going to happen in Texas too. But we, once again, want to lead by example, try to do it effectively as we can. We're going to be leading with Texas veterans first, and we have some pretty high-ranking retired officers, really high-ranking, who are going to be the leadership for this program. But Texans first. The leadership has to be Texans. Same lessons out of Bundy Ranch. You got to have strong local leadership. You can't rely on outside unknowns. The core has to be locals. Then you bring in volunteers from outside, which you vet carefully, like we did at Ferguson. But that's what we're going to do in Texas. It has to be done. Because if we don't guard that border, and if we let Obama do what he has planned, there will be no more United States. Just the way it is. Yes, ma'am? Oh, I thought you had a question. Okay, we're done? One more? Just go ahead, ma'am.
I would just like to say that probably most women up here already know how to can and preserve food. And growing gardens and all that, that's just a traditional way of life in this area. So if you don't know how to can, you just probably find a neighbor lead, and she'll probably teach you.
Well, I would encourage you to organize classes here and teach everyone.
Stewart, we have 2 instructors for our strategic food reserves, Tia and my wife Heather. They put on classes.
Because of our EMP class, we're going to start again in January.
Great, awesome. And put those on video. Any classes you guys do, I encourage you to put them on video, and then we'll put them up on Oath Keepers. We'll share them with the whole country. Okay, that's really critical for us to do that.
We'll make y'all stars.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, our whole, the only thing I insist on is it has to be credible, it has to be effective, and the folks that do it have to be true experts in what they're doing. But as long as you're squared away, put it on video, and we'll put it to the whole world. Yeah. It is critical. We call them Liberty Gardens. You know, if you have a garden, you can raise your own food. That is going to be, like Bram was talking about earlier, the system, this artificial system that's placed over our heads is about to collapse. The rest of the world is decoupling from the dollar, getting out from under it. We need to do the same. You need to have resilient, redundant, local communities that are self-sustainable. You need it. So go grab those tree-hugging greenies out there that grow all the veggies and stuff like that, and tap into that network, you know, and cultivate that, and learn from them too. Okay, any other questions? We good? We're good? Okay.